Let me tell you about something that happened to a man named Zhang Wei, a mid-level IT consultant from Beijing who took a trip down to Chengdu for a 3-day software expo. He wasn't famous, not even particularly interesting, just a regular guy working hard, taking business trips, and trying to make enough money to maybe buy a better apartment one day. This trip should have been routine. Land, check in, give a short presentation, attend a few boring panels, eat some spicy hot pot, and fly back. That was the plan. But it didn't happen that way. Zhang Wei arrived in Chengdu late on a Thursday. It was raining when he landed, that heavy kind of rain that makes you want to skip dinner and go straight to bed. He grabbed a cab from the airport and told the driver the name of the hotel the company had booked him in, the Minshan Century Hotel, a standard 3-star place near Tianfu Square. Decent reviews, nothing fancy. But when he arrived, there was a problem. The front desk looked confused when he gave them his name. They checked the system, then checked again, then made a few calls. Finally, the woman behind the counter said, "Sir, your reservation was cancelled this morning." "What?" he said, frowning. "By who?" She shrugged, clearly unsure. "All we see is a cancellation request from your company's agency." "I'm very sorry, but we're fully booked for the weekend because of the expo." Zhang Wei stood there, wet from the rain, suitcase dripping onto the marble floor, face getting hot with frustration. He called his company's travel desk. No answer. It was past 10 p.m. He called again, still nothing. The front desk manager, trying to be helpful, said, "There's another place nearby. It's not on most of the booking platforms, but it's clean. Local style. I can call and check for a room." Zhang Wei nodded reluctantly. "Fine. Whatever. Just get me a place to sleep." 5 minutes later, he was dragging his suitcase down a quiet side street. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The hotel was less than a 10-minute walk away, tucked between a pharmacy and a closed tea shop. It was called the Hua Sheng Guest House. He almost missed it. There was no English sign. Just 3 old Chinese characters above the door, half lit by a flickering red lantern. The entrance was narrow, the kind that looked like it hadn't been painted since the 90s. But the door was open, and a man behind the counter greeted him politely. The room was cheap, 180 yuan a night. No ID copy required, no paperwork. Just cash or mobile pay. Zhang Wei was too tired to question it. The man behind the counter handed him a worn key attached to a leather tag that said, "Room 313. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. No vending machines, no music, no staff. Just dim overhead lights, and a long, narrow corridor that smelled faintly of damp wood and old incense. His room was at the very end, room 313. The door looked like all the others, except for one small thing. There was no peephole, just a plain wooden surface painted over in faded beige. He hesitated, then slid the key in and opened the door. The moment he stepped inside, he noticed it. The temperature. It was cold, freezing cold, not air-conditioned, the kind of cold that felt wrong, like stepping into a room that hadn't been opened in weeks. The lights flickered when he flipped the switch. One bulb above the bed gave off a faint yellow glow, barely illuminating the room. But everything was clean. A twin bed with stiff white sheets, a narrow desk with an old chair, a kettle, a small mirror, and a window that looked out into nothing. Zhang Wei walked over and opened the curtains. Behind the glass was a concrete wall. No alley, no view. Just grey concrete pressed tight against the window, as if the building had been boxed in after the room was built. "Weird," he mumbled, pulling the curtains shut again. He sat on the bed, pulled out his phone, and checked for Wi-Fi. One network popped up. Huasheng 313 private. No password. He connected automatically. He didn't think much of it, just assumed it was per-room Wi-Fi. But still, something about the network name felt too specific, too personal. As he got ready for bed, he noticed something else. There was a small notebook on the desk. The cover was plain. No hotel branding, no welcome message. Just a single word handwritten in Chinese on the front. Ji Lu, record. He opened it. Inside were a few pages of scribbled notes, all handwritten, different pens, different styles. They were dated. The most recent one was from exactly 1 year ago. And it said, "I heard it again last night, the knocking from the wardrobe. I told the front desk, but they just smiled. If you're reading this, don't open it. Not after midnight." Jiang Wei stared at the words. He turned to look at the wardrobe. It stood against the far wall. Old, wooden, painted shut, it seemed. No visible handle. He laughed dryly. "Some sick joke," he muttered. He closed the notebook, then lay down. By 11:58 p.m. he was almost asleep, until the first knock came. Jiang Wei sat up, heart skipping a beat. Knock. It wasn't loud, not like someone trying to be heard. It was soft, measured, like it was meant for someone who already knew to listen. He turned his head slowly, eyes landing on the wardrobe. The old wooden thing stood still in the dark, a sliver of light from the hallway leaking in under the door to the room. Another knock, then silence. Jiang didn't move. For nearly 30 seconds he sat there, trying to rationalize. Old buildings. Creak. Maybe it's pipes, maybe it's wood expanding in the cold, but then it came again. 3 knocks this time, more urgent, closer to the edge. He flicked on the bedside lamp. The wardrobe looked the same. No rattling, no shaking, just sitting there in its corner like it had been since he arrived. He stood up, walked slowly toward it. Every step made the wooden floor creak slightly beneath his feet. The lamp behind him cast a long, stretched-out shadow that seemed to shiver across the carpet. He placed his hand on the wardrobe door. Cold, icy cold. He gave it a light tug. It didn't move. He tugged harder. Still nothing. Just then, his phone vibrated on the desk behind him. The sound snapped through the silence like a gunshot. Spun around and walked back quickly, picked up the phone. No name, no number, just one message. "Don't open it, not yet." Jiang Wei froze. Goosebumps crawled up the back of his neck. He stared at the message. There was no sender info, no thread, just those 6 words. He tried calling back. Nothing, no ringing, no dial tone, just a soft crackle and then silence. He dropped the phone on the desk. Suddenly, the power flickered. The light dimmed, then came back on. He turned his head slowly, back toward the wardrobe, still shut, still quiet. But now there was a thin line of ash-colored dust coming out from underneath it, like someone had dragged dirt across the carpet, just barely visible under the yellow glow of the lamp. Zhang's breath caught. This isn't normal. This isn't anything close to normal. He reached for the room phone, dialed reception. The line clicked. Then he heard it. Breathing, not his own. Shallow, raspy, like someone on the other end was just listening. He whispered, "Hello?" Nothing. Then a voice, faint, cracked, like it hadn't been used in a long time. "Room 313, shouldn't be open." Jiang gripped the phone tighter. "Who is this?" The voice exhaled hard, like it was trying to warn him, or maybe trying to say more, but the line suddenly went dead. Not even a click, just silence. He slammed the phone down. At that moment, another knock, this time from inside the wardrobe. Loud enough to shake the door slightly. He backed up quickly, heart pounding. Then came the sound he feared most. Click. The wardrobe door shifted slightly, just a crack. But it had unlatched. Jiang Wei didn't wait. He grabbed his suitcase, threw his essentials in and ran. Down the hallway past the blinking lights, pounding the elevator button with shaking hands. But the elevator didn't come. He turned, bolted for the stairs instead. As he ran down the dim stairwell, something strange happened. With every floor he passed, the signs on the wall said Level 3. Every single floor. He stopped after 4. Flights, panting, confused, and looked at the sign again. 3F, etched into a metal plate. He was still on the 3rd floor, no matter how far he ran down. Suddenly, a door at the end of the stairwell creaked open, and something stepped in. Just a shadow at first, long limbs, not quite human in posture, like someone crawling upright. It stopped halfway into the stairwell and just stood there. Jiang Wei turned back up the stairs, full panic now, took them 2 at a time, back to the hallway. But when he reached the top, he wasn't in the hallway anymore. He was back in room 313, same bed, same desk, same silent wardrobe, door slightly open, and the notebook, sitting open on the bed now. With a fresh entry scribbled in the middle of the page, "Once the room knows your name, you can't leave. Not until someone else checks in." Zhang stared at the words, frozen. The wardrobe creaked wider. From the corner of his eye, he saw something long and pale slide across the floor. And then the lights cut out. Jiang Wei didn't scream, he couldn't. It was like his throat had closed up. Every muscle in his neck froze as his eyes locked onto the dark shape creeping out from beneath the wardrobe. The lights were gone, but there was still just enough moonlight leaking through the curtains to make out the movement. Slow, deliberate, wrong. Something was crawling. Not quite human. Thin fingers, or what looked like fingers, stretched along the carpet. They were too long, too many joints, like they had been grown rather than born. The rest of the thing was still in shadow, hiding. Behind the crack of the wardrobe door, Zhang stumbled backward until his back hit the wall. His breath came in shallow bursts. He reached for the door handle, grabbed it, locked. He hadn't locked it, he never locked it. He turned back around just in time to see the fingers retreat slowly into the wardrobe. And then, the door shut, by itself. Click. The room was still again. Pitch black. Jiang Wei stayed frozen for what felt like an hour, though it was probably just a few minutes. Eventually, trembling, he reached into his pocket for his phone. The screen lit up. 2:44 a.m. Still no signal. Still connected to the strange Wi-Fi, Huasheng 313 private. And now there were new notifications. He tapped one. It was a message from the same unknown number. Only this time, it wasn't text. It was a photo, taken seconds ago, of him, sitting in the corner of the room, from behind. Zhang dropped the phone like it had burned him. It clattered to the ground and the screen cracked. No sound, no footsteps, just a single, soft chuckle, right behind him. He didn't turn around, couldn't. Instead, slowly, with his heart slamming against his ribs, he reached for the nightstand drawer, looking for anything he could use. A Bible, a flashlight, something. But what he found wasn't helpful, just another notebook. This one wasn't blank like the last. It was full, page after page after page of desperate handwriting, some in Chinese, some in other languages. Japanese, Korean, even Russian. All of them were notes, warnings, scrawled entries from past guests. If you're reading this, you're already too late. Room 313 doesn't belong to the hotel. It belongs to it. The wardrobe is just a gate. What's behind it isn't from here. There is no escape unless someone else takes your place. That same line again. Someone else has to check in. Zhang stared at the page, mouth dry. And then he flipped to the last entry. It was recent, very recent, written in red ink, shaky and slanted. "Tonight I gave the front desk your name." He blinked, read it again. "I gave the front desk your name." That's when he noticed something else, the mirror on the wall. He hadn't really looked at it since checking in, but now he saw it was fogged, even though the room was cold. Even though he hadn't taken a shower. He stood slowly and walked toward it. There were letters forming in the steam, even as he watched, first in Chinese, then repeated in English, like it wanted to make sure he understood. One in, one out. He spun around. The wardrobe door was wide open now, not cracked, fully open. Inside, the space looked wrong, too deep, too black, as if it stretched back forever. Not into the closet of a hotel room, but somewhere else, somewhere impossible. From the bottom of it, something slithered. A whisper passed through the room like a breath against his ear. "You know the rules now." The lights flickered once, and then for just a flash, Zhang saw a face, not a reflection, not his own, a face staring back from inside the wardrobe, his face, but the skin was pale, the eyes were too wide, the smile too long, and then it was gone. The door shut again. Click! Zhang turned and ran to the room phone. He dialed the front desk again. This time someone answered, the same calm voice from earlier. "Front desk." He swallowed hard. "I need help, please. I'm in room 313. There's something wrong. There's something in here. A long pause. Then the voice replied softly, "Sir, there is no room 313. Jiang Wei stood there, frozen, the phone pressed tight to his ear. "No, I'm in room 313, he whispered, panic in his voice. "I checked in tonight. Look it up. The man at the counter gave me the key. Leather tag, old key. You have to see it in the system." The front desk voice stayed quiet for a moment. Then came the reply, flat and detached. "Sir, our hotel has no third floor. The building ends at level 2. Jiang's heart skipped. He slowly turned, eyes darting to the door of the room. Then the walls, the floor, everything. He had taken the elevator to the 3rd floor. He remembered clearly. The hallway, the long corridor, the heavy silence. It was real. He hadn't imagined it. Had he? No. "No, wait. You don't understand," he snapped. "The room is real. I'm here. This isn't some prank. I need security to come up here right now, or the police. Something is wrong with this room." Silence again, then the voice said quietly, "Sir, where exactly are you calling from?" Jiang's stomach dropped. He looked at the phone again. There was no display, no line ID. It wasn't even connected, no wire, no port, just an old dusty rotary-style handset that had never been plugged into anything. His hand slowly lowered the receiver until it clicked back into place. The temperature in the room dropped again. He could see his breath. His eyes scanned the desk, the bed, the walls. That notebook. It was gone, vanished, like it was never there. The cracked phone on the desk still sat where he dropped it, but the screen had gone black. And then he heard it again. Footsteps. Not inside the room. No. Above him. Directly above. Slow, deliberate, steady. But the front desk just said there was no 3rd floor. Jiang moved to the center of the room, heart pounding in his chest like it wanted to rip its way out. He didn't even realize his hands were shaking. He looked up at the ceiling. There it was, a small square outline, an attic door. He hadn't noticed it before, probably because it had been shut. But now, it was open. Not wide, just a sliver. Just enough to see that inside was pitch black. As he stared up, something, long and thin, slid down from the crack. Not a rope. A hand. White. Bone-like. Motionless. Hanging there like bait. Jiang stumbled backward, hit the edge of the desk. He grabbed the broken phone, the only thing within reach, and hurled it upward. With a cry. It hit the ceiling with a loud thud. The hand vanished. The attic door slammed shut, and the lights, for once, didn't flicker. But now he could hear it, breathing. From the wardrobe again, slow, wet, close. Jiang didn't know what else to do. He moved to the corner of the room, crouched down, clutching his knees to his chest like a child. This isn't happening. I'm hallucinating. I'm dreaming. This isn't real. But he knew it was. He'd never felt more awake in his life. He sat there for what felt like hours, waiting for the sun, the noise of the city, the outside world to break in and remind him that reality still existed, but nothing came. No light, no dawn, just the same dim yellow lamp overhead, buzzing, just the same concrete wall behind the curtain. Time didn't move here. Then, finally, a sound, a new one. The door, the lock clicking open. Jiang looked up. It was morning now. Light had crept into the hallway, dim, grey but natural, and standing in the doorway was the same man who checked him in last night. Calm face, hotel uniform, not a single hair out of place. He smiled politely. "Sir," he said, "we have your check-out request here. Are you ready to leave?" Jiang couldn't speak. He nodded slowly, knees weak, legs numb. The man didn't step inside. Didn't even glance around the room. He simply extended his hand, palm up. Jiang stood on unsteady legs, grabbed his half-packed suitcase, and walked out the door. But as he stepped past the threshold, the hotel clerk leaned in slightly and said, under his breath, "Next time, don't pick room 313 even when they offer it." Jiang opened his mouth to ask 100 questions, but the man was already gone, walking down the hall silent, leaving no sound behind. He didn't go to the front desk, didn't wait for a receipt. He didn't even ask for his refund. He just left. And when he looked back, the guest house wasn't there. The pharmacy still stood. The tea shop too. But where the Huasheng guest house had been, just a concrete wall, covered in ivy, no door, no sign, like it had never existed. Jiang Wei didn't go home right away. After leaving the alley, or whatever it had turned into, he walked, for hours. No direction, no destination, just moving. Like if he stopped, that room would catch up with him again. Eventually, sometime, around 9 a.m., he found himself at a noodle shop near Jinli Street, in the old part of Chengdu. The street was buzzing already with tourists and locals. Street vendors opened their stalls. Kids shouted. Someone was playing traditional music on an erhu nearby. Everything was normal, painfully, mockingly normal. He sat at a plastic table outside the shop, hands still trembling, and ordered a bowl of noodles just to feel like he was doing something sane. The waitress asked if he was okay. He smiled weakly. "Didn't sleep well," he said. But sleep had nothing to do with it. The moment the food arrived, he forced himself to eat, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. The hotel, the room, the message, the face in the mirror that looked like his, but wasn't. And the worst part? That line, "Someone else has to check in." He kept coming back to it over and over like a hook in the back of his brain. Then his phone buzzed. Despite the cracked screen, it still worked. He glanced down. One new message, unknown sender. Just 2 words, "Thank you." His stomach flipped. He didn't reply, didn't dare. Instead, he switched the phone off completely and stuffed it deep into his bag. He went straight to the convention center after that, where he was scheduled to give a short talk about cloud infrastructure migration. The moment he walked in, a coworker clapped him on the back. "Rough night?" the guy said with a chuckle. "You look like hell." Jiang didn't even answer. He just nodded. He powered through the day, gave his talk, answered questions, and kept to himself. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, he had made up his mind. He needed answers. So instead of going back to the hotel his company had originally booked, Jiang pulled up his browser and started searching. Huasheng Guest House Chengdu. Nothing. Not a single hit. No listings, no reviews, not even on Baidu Maps. He tried translating it, simplifying the name, adding Old Inn, private rental, even just the address, still nothing. Then he remembered the notebook, the messages inside. He searched again, this time broader. Chengdu Hotel Room 313 missing floor. Strange Room Hotel China warning notebook. Room 313 haunted missing from system. This time he got something. A post buried deep in a Mandarin horror forum, dated 3 years ago. The thread title, "Does anyone know the truth about Room 313 in Chengdu?" The user who posted it had only one comment, a wall of text that started with, "I stayed in a guest house 2 years ago. They told me Room 313 didn't exist, but I was in it. I know I was in it." Jiang's heart started to hammer again. He scrolled further down the thread. Replies were sparse. A few jokes, a few warnings. One user even wrote, "Delete this post, that room tracks keywords." Another reply, more recent, "If you've seen the wardrobe, it's already watching. Get rid of your phone, don't return to Chengdu." Jiang's mouth went dry. He leaned back in the stiff convention center chair, trying to process everything. Then he thought of something that made his blood run cold. The man at the desk, the one who handed him the key, he never asked for Jiang's name, never took his ID. He had only said, "We've got a room, 313. As if he had been waiting for someone, any someone. That thought burned in his head. The whole flight back to Beijing the next morning. He didn't talk to anyone, barely slept. When the wheels touched down, the first thing he did was power up his phone. It booted. No messages, no missed calls, no apps. Everything had been wiped, factory reset. Even the Wi-Fi logs were gone. But there was one thing left in the photos folder. A single image. A screenshot of a hotel booking page that didn't exist anymore. A listing for Huasheng Guest House. Check-in date, 2 nights ago. Room assigned, 313. And in the corner, just barely visible, was a figure. Standing in the mirror behind him. Same pale skin, same smile, Same Jiang Wei, but its eyes weren't looking at the camera. They were looking at him. Jiang Wei stared at the photo, frozen in his seat. He hadn't taken it, he was sure of that. The lighting was dim, the yellowish glow from the room's single ceiling bulb. He was sitting on the bed looking down, probably at his phone. The mirror on the far wall reflected him clearly, but behind his reflection, standing just slightly out of focus, was that thing. It wore his face, but the skin was pale, lifeless, like wax. The smile stretched just a little too wide, and the eyes, glassy, dead, were locked onto him like it was studying him, waiting. There was something so calm about it, not threatening, just patient. Jiang didn't realize how long he'd been staring until the flight attendant walked past and gently tapped him. "Sir," she said softly in Mandarin, "we've landed." He nodded slowly, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and stood up. Every nerve in his body told him to destroy the phone, wipe the memory, forget it ever happened. But he couldn't. That face in the mirror, it was like it had been burned into his mind. As he stepped off the plane and into the Beijing terminal, something else occurred to him. The room hadn't just let him leave. It had used him. The notebook said it clearly. Someone else has to check in. And when he left, the clerk had smiled and thanked him like a transaction was complete. But who had he replaced? And worse, who would come next? He didn't sleep that night. Not really. He sat in his small apartment in Chaoyang, lights on, windows locked, watching the clock crawl toward morning. Every creak in the walls, every buzz of the fridge, every shadow. It all felt wrong, but nothing happened. By sunrise, he started to think maybe it was over. Maybe he was just lucky. That was the day the delivery came. A small padded envelope at his door, no return address, no sender. Inside was a single item, a key, brass, worn, attached to an old leather tag. Room 313. Jiang dropped it immediately. Backed away like it was something radioactive. He didn't touch it again. Instead, he got dressed and took it straight to a police station. He waited an hour to speak with someone. A young officer listened patiently as Jiang tried to explain. No hotel by that name. A room that didn't exist. Strange noises. Disappearing floors. Creepy photos. Vanishing listings. The officer nodded slowly, clearly trying to be polite, but his expression was what you'd expect. Restrained disbelief. Jiang showed him the key. The officer examined it, turned it over a few times, then shrugged. "Probably an old hotel that went under," he said. "Someone trying to play a joke, maybe. You're not the first to bring in weird stuff like this." Jiang leaned in. "Has anyone else mentioned room 313? The officer paused. His lips parted slightly, like he wanted to say something. Then he caught himself. "No," he said. "Never heard of it." But his eyes were lying, Jiang could tell. The officer slipped the key into a plastic evidence bag, sealed it, and wrote something on the tag. He told Jiang they'd look into it. That was it. But when Jiang walked out, he realized something strange. There had been no receipt, no file number. They didn't even ask for his name, they just took it. And that night, another envelope. This time taped to his apartment door from the inside. He knew he hadn't left it unlocked. Inside, the same. Key, same brass, same tag. Still room 313. He threw it out, down the garbage chute, 6 floors down. The next morning, he found it again, in his coat pocket. That was the moment Jiang started to believe the truth. He hadn't left room 313. Not really, it left with him. Jiang Wei didn't go to work, didn't answer his phone, didn't eat. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the key resting on his kitchen counter, like it might move on its own. He hadn't touched it since pulling it from his coat pocket that morning. His apartment no longer felt safe. It was cold, like room 313 cold. He couldn't explain it, but the air felt wrong, still, heavy, as if something invisible was watching him from behind the walls, waiting for the moment he blinked. By noon, he couldn't take it anymore. He snapped. He grabbed the key, stormed, out of the building, and took the subway downtown to Liulichang, the old book and antique district of Beijing. It was one of the few places he remembered where strange didn't seem out of place. There was an old man who ran a second-hand bookstore down a side alley, dusty shelves, creaky floors, barely any customers. Zhang had only met him once before, years ago. He remembered the man had spoken of haunted manuscripts and cursed scrolls like they were facts, not folklore. The moment Zhang stepped inside, the old man looked up from behind the counter and narrowed his eyes. "You brought something." "Bad," he said in Mandarin, not as a question but a statement. Zhang didn't speak right away. He simply placed the key on the counter. The man stared at it, didn't touch it. After a long silence, he said, "Where did you get this?" "A hotel," Zhang said. "Chengdu, room 3113. The old man's eyes flicked upward sharply. "You went inside?" Zhang nodded slowly. "I didn't mean to," he said. "I just needed a place to sleep. They offered me a room, that was it." The man didn't speak for several seconds. Then he finally said, "There is no room 313, not really. Not in any hotel, that number. It was erased long ago on purpose from blueprints, construction files, rental ledgers, the same way floors skip from 12 to 14. But sometimes," he gestured at the key, "sometimes it comes back." Zhang whispered, "What is it?" The old man leaned in slightly. "There are places in this world," he said, "that don't belong to this world. Pockets of space and slippages, like folds in paper. They appear where energy is stagnant, where death lingers too long, where time forgets to move forward." He nodded toward the key. "Room 313 is one of those pockets. It latches onto grief, regret, loneliness. It offers space to those who are most vulnerable. Travelers, wanderers, people no one's waiting for." Zhang felt the chill again, just hearing it. "I left it," he said. "I walked out. The sun came up. I escaped." The man shook his head. "You think it lets you leave?" he said. "No. That room never opens its door unless it gets something in return." Zhang's stomach twisted. "I didn't give it anything." The man looked at him darkly. "You gave it you, not your body, your image, your reflection. A piece of your identity is now inside that space. It can show you to others, call them, lure them, just like it lured you." Zhang's breath caught. That's what the thing in the mirror was. Why it looked like him. He hadn't just visited room 313, he had joined it. He tried to speak, but his voice broke. "How do I stop it?" The man slowly reached below the counter and retrieved a faded cloth bag. He slid it toward Zhang. Inside is ash, burned rice paper, mixed with copper and clay from earth that hasn't been disturbed in 100 years. If you bury the key in a temple's foundation and never speak its number again, it might lose its grip. "Might," Zhang repeated. The old man nodded solemnly. "But it's already taken part of you. That can't be undone. You'll feel it. It'll try to come back, it always tries." Zhang looked down at the key. For a second, just a second, he thought it moved, just twitched on the countertop. He grabbed the cloth bag, placed the key inside without a word, and left. The city felt strange as he walked. Streets slightly unfamiliar. Pedestrians moving too slowly. At one point he caught his reflection in a shop window and didn't recognize himself. Same face, yes, but the expression, the eyes, they didn't feel like his. It was getting stronger. He could feel it. That night Zhang didn't go home. Instead, he took a taxi to an old monastery, an hour outside the city. He waited until the monks finished evening prayers, then offered a quiet donation and asked if he could walk the grounds. They didn't ask questions. He walked around to the rear garden where the foundation stones were exposed, weathered by age and untouched by concrete. There, under moonlight, he dug a shallow hole. He placed the cloth bag inside, covered it with soil, pressed his palms together, and said nothing. Not the name of the hotel, not the number, just silence. Then something strange happened. The air warmed, just slightly. And for the first time in days, he felt alone, truly alone. No whispering, no static, no weight on his chest. But he also knew one thing. Room 313 wasn't gone, just waiting for its next guest. It's been a year. Jiang Wei never told his company what really happened in Chengdu. When people asked about the conference, he'd just nod vaguely and say it was fine or forgettable. They never noticed the subtle changes in him, how he avoided elevators now, how he never stayed in hotels more than one night, how he always asked for rooms on the second floor only. He kept the lights on when he slept. Always. His apartment became something like a fortress, mirrors removed, windows double-locked, curtains never opened after sunset. He'd stopped using most apps, abandoned his old phone completely. The new one had no front-facing camera, no location services, no connected cloud accounts, and still. Sometimes late at night he'd feel it, that weight in the air, like a door was opening in a place he couldn't see. A few months after burying the key, he started getting dreams. They were always the same, walking down a long, narrow hallway, third floor, doors on both sides, but no numbers, just walls that pulsed slightly, like they were breathing. At the end of the hall, the wardrobe would always be waiting, wide open but showing only blackness inside. He'd always wake up before reaching it, but every time he felt a little closer. He tried talking to someone about it, a therapist once, but even just describing what happened made the lights flicker in the office. The therapist's laptop crashed mid-session. Her face had gone pale, but she said nothing. She just stared at him. He never went back. Then, last week, something happened that made him realize it was starting again. Jiang was out for groceries in a quiet neighborhood near Xicheng, walking past a small internet cafe, when something in the window caught his eye. A flyer, paper, taped to the glass. It read, "Need a quiet stay in Chengdu. Simple, affordable. Rooms, walk-ins welcome. Ask for room 313. There was no phone number, just a QR code. Jiang didn't scan it. He didn't even get close. He just turned and walked away, fast, heart racing. But the worst part? As he passed by the glass, he saw his own reflection. And in it, he was smiling. But he wasn't. His face was still, eyes wide. Yet in the reflection, he was smiling like he wanted to go back. That night, Jiang packed a small go bag, cash, passport, burner phone, change of clothes, and kept it by the door. Not because he had a plan, but because deep down he knew the room wasn't done with him. It was calling again. Not urgently, not angrily, just patiently. And then, 2 nights ago, the final sign came. There was a knock at the door, not loud, just polite. 3 taps like someone who already knew he was inside. Jiang stood there, frozen. He didn't ask who it was. He didn't look through the peephole. He didn't open the door. But when he woke the next morning, something had changed. On his kitchen table, where he had laid out his travel bag, sat something that hadn't been there the night before. A leather tag. Brass key, room 313, and next to it, a notebook, the same kind he found on the desk in the guest house. He opened it, fingers shaking. Inside was one message, written in careful handwriting, the same as his own. I didn't escape. I delayed it. One day I'll forget and check in again. That's how it works. 1 in, 1 out. Jiang closed the book slowly. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just sat down at the table, placed the key in front of him, and stared at it until the sun came up. And somewhere, in a city, not on any map, behind a wall no one notices, a door creaked open. The lights flickered. A wardrobe stirred. And room 313 waited. For you.